Good afternoon and welcome inside another edition of That's What I Think with Brandon Swanson. And this week it is different. It is very different. And I'm joined by someone, first of all. There is no Chicago background behind me.
How's my princess wave, Brandon? Am I doing it too fast?
It's okay. I think it could be a little bit higher, above the head. Above
is it supposed to be above the head?
Above the head, so the peasants can see. Come on now.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not a princess.
No.
I'm not a Disney princess for sure.
No,
I learned there are strict rules for that.
No, you are not.
I hear there are strict rules for that.
No, you are not. But welcome inside, like I said, another edition of That's What I Think with Brandon Swanson. I'm Brandon Swanson. I'm joined by Ricky WIdmer.
WIdmer.
Wiki.
Or WIdmer, if you switch them. WIdmer.
Ricky WIdmer.
Yeah, that's what it would be if you switched the W and the R. The first name still sounds the same. Ricky and Wiki.
Ricky and Wiki. Yeah, you're right.
But then it's just Widmer or Ridmer. I like Widmer better than Ridmer. Because Ridmer sounds like you're getting rid of me, and we don't want to do that, right?
No, we don't. No, we don't, because then we'd be without a lot of podcasts.
Yeah, we would.
But, folks, we are doing things a little bit different this week on That's What I Think, and it's because we wanted to, and I wanted to, do a preview of Notre Dame football.
We also got a comment for it.
And we did. We had someone ask about it. I wanted to be able to do it because Notre Dame is a team that is in the top 25. It's a team that we'll talk about a lot this season. It's a team we wanted to be able to preview.
Until they fall off the map, then we'll forget about them.
Shut your mouth. But go back to Whore Island. I think that Notre Dame is a team that we need to look at because of where they stand right now. And they're a team, obviously, that is not in a conference. So we weren't able to look at them when we went through everyone else, and we finished that up earlier this week. So, Ricky, this is a team that last year, they go 10-3. Pretty good season, even though they fell off in November. They had an outstanding October. They fell off in November. They barely beat Navy. They lost badly to Miami. Then they had that Navy game. They won it. And then they did not look good against Stanford to end the season. And they lost early in the season, game 2, 20-19 to Georgia.
Well, that was Jake Fromm's coming out party.
They played a good game. To just barely lose to a Georgia team that then went off to lose in the national championship game, that's not a bad loss. You have 3 losses, but this is coming off of a season that you had a 4-8. You were horrible. You lost to Duke at home. Your defense was atrocious. And you look at it, they're now going through their 3rd defensive coordinator in 3 years. And last year, things got back on track, and then he leaves for Texas A&M. You now bring in Lee, and you hope that he's going to do the same type of things because that was his mentor. But this Notre Dame team, Ricky, to just kind of throw it out there for you, people believed that 2016 was a fluke. People believe that 2017 was a fluke.
I think it kind of was.
What, in your mind, do you believe and do you foresee from this 2018 Notre Dame Fighting Irish squad?
Well, I'm glad you brought up the defense first, because to me, that's the most important. It's the most important part to this Notre Dame team, not just because you said they're bringing in their 3rd new defensive coordinator, but I've got the schedule here on my phone. I'm not texting. I'm just don't have my computer today. This is some of the offenses they are going to play that we have already previewed and spoken very highly of. Michigan with a Shea Patterson. This is the year we have said that this could be Jim Harbaugh's best because he finally has a quarterback that he can work with at Michigan. That's going to be tough to open up the year. I know it's in South Bend, but it's still going to be a tough game. Then you play Stanford. Yeah, you're getting them at home, but the last time I checked, Bryce Love is still on that team. And you lost to him last year, so you got to prove to me this year that you can beat them. You don't get Miami like last year, but you get Virginia Tech, and they've got a quarterback coming back in Josh Jackson. No, not the one that plays for the Phoenix Suns, the one that is on the Virginia Tech Hokies. And then you got some teams that could be sneaky, like USC's offense could be good. I know we got a comment on our SC preview of someone said that JT Daniels is going to make people forget the name Sam Darnold, which I'm like, No, they're not, because Sam Darnold's playing with the Jets, and he's going to do really good with the Jets, so people aren't going to forget his name. But JT Daniels could be good. Florida State, although I am down on them, and Florida State fans hate me, I love the hate that we're getting on the Florida State stuff. It just makes me feel like I'm getting emotions from those fans in Tallahassee.
Which is why you do it, which is why you love the hate, right?
To me, I love the emotional connection. If I can get an emotion out of you watching this, I have done my job, whether that is a good or bad emotion. But I mean, depending on what quarterback they go with, if either one of them is on, that could be a tough game. Northwestern could be a tough game this year, depending on how they come out. So that's what? 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll say 5. I'll say 4 for sure. 5, maybe 6 of these games could be tough just because of the offenses that you're going to play.
Speaking of offense, there is no longer a Josh Adams for Notre Dame. There is no longer an Equanimous St. Brown.
Yeah, he's on the Packers now.
There is no longer a Kevin Steverson. Those names are gone offensively, and those guys made up a lot of yards, a lot of points, a lot of touchdowns. Brandon Wimbush is still most likely the quarterback. I love what Brandon Wimbush has done. I think that he should be the quarterback going forward, and I think that Notre Dame is going to be successful with him as the quarterback going forward. But you lose these guys, and defensively in the secondary is where you're probably going to be your shakiest. Everything else seems to be pretty good. You have a lot of returners, and up front you look solid. In the middle you look solid, and then, like I said, in the secondary is where problems could arise. But offensively for Notre Dame, how do you look at this team playing out, especially because they seem to have their quarterback in place, but you're looking at a new running back and a new host of receivers?
The wide receivers is where I look to, and they have to have guys step up, because especially one of the names that you mentioned is the one that sparks out to me, Equanimous St. Brown. Without him being on this team, that was a playmaker that you do not have. I'm not saying they don't have wide receivers. It's not like, oh, well, they're the Green Bay Packers of college football, and their wide receiver core is piss poor, and Brian Kelly's coming out there and calling them piss poor. I'm not saying it's that levels, but someone from the wide receiver core needs to step up. And for me this year, I kind of find it interesting kind of taking the offense and going into this point that I was thinking about. What was it, like the past few years? I think it was going back like maybe 2-3 years. Just the kind of quarterbacks which have brought us to this point. You had Everett Golson, then you had the Everett Golson, Deshaun Kaiser debate. Many thought that the quarterback decision, the one that Brian Kelly went with, wasn't the right decision. Then you pull him, go with the other guy. And now we're at Wimbush, where Wimbush was the starter last year. That should be good consistently, that you're getting the same guy as your starter. But to me, I wonder, and I'll ask you, what you being the ND fan and me kind of being the ND hater, I will say, because I'm not usually high on Notre Dame and they're not one of my favorite teams. I kind of see them like the New York Yankees of college football. This is a team that...
Hardly. They've won much less.
I'm just saying fan-wise, like they're a very popular team, and I hate them like I hate the Yankees. So that's why I make that. But you've got 2 years ago... No, not 2 years ago. So 2012, they go to the national title game. Yes, they lose to Alabama, but they are one of the top 2 teams in college football. Then they have a pretty good season the next year. They finish in the top 25. Yet again, those 2 seasons, all the wins were vacated. Then in 2014, that's where things get rough. Then an 8-5 season, which you'll say, Ricky, it's still a winning record. Yeah, but it's not where they just were. Then they go up to 10-3, where it's like, great, that's the Notre Dame team that we're used to. But then it was 10-3, 4-8, 10-3. What is this year going to be? Is this going to be a fall down where they're back to 4-8, 5 wins at most? Let's say it's an 8-win season like it was in 2014. Or can they say that, you know what, we are going to build off of last year, and that 10-3 was not a fluke? like we had last year. We won 10 games. We're still consistent because one of the biggest things that I've kind of thought of with this Notre Dame team is, in the greater sense of everything, is Brian Kelly the right coach for this team at this point? Not saying that he wasn't before, because he did get them to a national title game. But like this year, let's say they have a bad year, and let's say they get maybe like 5 wins. I'll say even 6. If they do get barely bowl eligible, will the Notre Dame fans be calling for Brian Kelly's head? And is that somewhere where Notre Dame, the history of Notre Dame football, is that where it's leading to, where this Notre Dame team is very on-off, 10-3, 4-8, 10-3, 8-5, 10-3, to where eventually it's like, you know what, we got to move on. We got to get somebody else in here, because eventually I would think that Notre Dame wants to compete for the college football playoff.
Well, Ricky, it's, you bring up a lot of really good points, and you brought up a whole lot right there. And I'll start off.
I opened Pandora's box, Brandon.
You did. You brought up a lot of things, and since Brian Kelly got to Notre Dame in 2010. 8-5 and 8-5 and 10 and 11, 12-1 in that 2012 season when they go to the college football, the college football national championship game. At that point, it was the BCS title game. Yes, and they didn't look good against Alabama, but there's not many teams that do.
Well, and Manti Te'o lost his girlfriend, so he couldn't find her. So that was a big thing going on in that game.
But even 2013, they go 9-4. 2014, it's 8-5. Then the 10-3, like you mentioned. Then it was 4-8 and 10-3, and now we sit here at 2018. Even you look back to Cincinnati in 2006, 1-0. In 2017, 10-3, then 11-3, then 12-0. And Central Michigan, the Central Michigan days, I won't even, back in 04, 05, 06, I'll barely talk about them.
Over a decade ago.
4-7, 6-5, 9-4. Brian Kelly is not a guy who loses. And especially in his mind. He is not a guy who loses. And we saw it during the 4-8 season, Ricky. He doesn't take losing well. And he doesn't take losing well because not only does he get upset with losing, is he blames his players for losing.
Holds them accountable.
It's not just holding accountable. What we find with a good coach is they do not blame their players outwardly to the media. And what did Brian Kelly do time and time again? He blamed his players in front of the media. In the game where it was a game they should not have even played, the monsoon game. And there were multiple fumbles.
That was 2 years ago, was it not? Right? It wasn't last season, it was the year before.
A year ago, 2 years ago.
I think that was in the 4-8 season.
It was 2 years ago. He openly blamed his players. Well, the reason we lost is because this guy did this. This guy lost the fumble. You should have never been playing the game, Brian. So what I'm trying to get at here is that a season of losing under Brian Kelly is awful. He does not allow it. He does not stand for it. I don't see this Notre Dame team sinking back to a 4-8 season. I see 4-8 as an absolute fluke. I think 10-3 is about right for Notre Dame football. I really do. And last season, they, again, had an outstanding October. November hit, and they played horribly against Miami. A lot of people, and I, myself included, believe that they were going to have a really good game against Miami. They lost, 41-8? And then the Stanford game. They played horribly against Stanford. They didn't even play well against Navy. This is a team that needs to get its act together defensively. That is number one. Offensively, I'm not too worried. They have their quarterback who accounted for 30 touchdowns last year with 16 passing, 14 rushing. Brandon Wimbush is going to be good. Brandon Wimbush is going to be okay. And he's going to help this offense move. And it's going to move and run through him. But this defense has got to. This defense has got to be better. And Clark Lee I think, can be the guy because he's taking over for Mike Elko, who leaves and goes to A&M.
Mm-hmm.
Lee's coming in, the linebacker coach. This is a guy who has seen what he needs to do, has seen what needs to happen, has worked with these guys, has worked with these returners. This has got to be a good defense. Like I'm not saying that it will or will not be, but it has to be. Under the Brian Kelly thought process and how he deals with his team, it's got to be. Because he doesn't deal well with losing.
Well, and the thing that I look at is I'm looking at the schedule and I'm looking where games will be played this year. Because if you look at some of the games we've mentioned already, out of the 3 losses last year, 1 was at home, but really Georgia played really good, had a really boom play at the end of that game from Jake Fromm to beat the Irish by 1, 20-19. So that wasn't like they got outplayed. They just had one big play for the Bulldogs that ended up beating the Irish. But then you look at the other 2 losses. They were both on the road. But the Navy one that you mentioned was at home. And the interesting thing is I was flipping through this schedule. I think that at best, Notre Dame is a 10-win team yet again. I'll say 9-3 regular season. I'm not going to speak to the bowl game because that depends on who they play. But I could see them being 9-3 at the end of the regular season, with their losses being to Michigan to open the year, Virginia Tech on the road, USC on the road. And I know what Notre Dame fans are going to say. Well, Ricky, we beat Notre Dame. We brought the shillelagh out against Notre Dame or against SC last season. Where was the game played? Game was played in South Bend. You're going to go to LA this time and have to play SC. That's going to be vastly different than playing in South Bend. But I look at the schedule, and the reason why I say Michigan is that's going to be a tough one because, yes, you would like to say coaches have infinite time to prep for that game. They have more than a week to prep because they know who that first opponent's going to be. But usually that first week we see some mistakes, and you can't make mistakes when you play a team like Michigan to start the year. Stanford, that's a game I could see them losing. Why? Bryce Love. Why can they win it? Stanford's defense. It's just that simple. Virginia Tech, it's really hard to play in Blacksburg, Virginia, especially when the Hokies have an offense. They're returning their quarterback for this year. Justin Fuentes has been phenomenal for them. But the interesting thing with their schedule, and this is what I want to ask you, 2 opponents that I think should be wins, but it's interesting about where they are playing. The Navy game this year is going to be at San Diego Community. It's going to be at SDCCU Stadium in San Diego, California. Neither Navy or Notre Dame call that stadium home. And then Syracuse, where that game is going to be played, number 1 at Yankee Stadium. You're playing it in a baseball field, kind of like the Pinstripe Bowl. And number 2, that's more of a home game for Syracuse than it is for Notre Dame. What do you see with this schedule? Does it worry you where it's like, hey, some of these road games, we didn't play too well on the road. We lost more road games last year, and now we don't have, on top of the road games we have 2 neutral site games that could be basically just seen as road games for us because they're not in South Bend.
It doesn't worry me too much. I think while Syracuse will be an improved team, I think their offense will be improved. I don't think that's a team that Notre Dame should lose to.
I mean, Clemson thought they weren't going to lose to them last year either.
At that point in the season, Notre Dame should be in a really good spot, I think. I mean, nothing should be surprising them is what I'm saying. There should be no reason why they should be losing to Syracuse. They are a much better team than Syracuse is, even with the improvements that Syracuse has made. There's no excuse for it, other than it would be an upset. I don't worry too much about the Navy game either. I would worry. I don't worry too much. I worry because we did not play well. I shouldn't say we. I'm not part of the team. Notre Dame played poorly against them last season. But I think that that's why Notre Dame is going to come back this year and not play poorly against them because they know what happened last year. They're going to be even more. There's certain games that I don't want to say that you prepare more for, but you're just mentally, that's the game that you are ready to come out and just do better.
Especially if you're a player.
And that's the type of game.
Especially if you're a player last year, you're like, wow, I played like diddly poo in that game. I want to prove that was a fluke.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm really about. Kind of like you get those revenge games too.
Absolutely. And, especially when you have a number of returners, returning starters as well, especially on the defensive side. And up front, I think they're going to try and put as much pressure as they can on Navy to make sure that does not happen yet again. So that's why that doesn't worry me a ton. It does. It does worry me a little bit because they won, but they played so poorly against them last year. But I don't worry as much about that like Virginia Tech game. Michigan's going to be an improved team this year. I absolutely know that. We've talked about it, but I don't see Notre Dame losing that game. I do not. The game that I know that a USC fan who called me out in the USC preview. This guy thinks that USC will lose a game at home to Notre Dame. I think it was me at least, but
well, I mean, I'm not a Notre Dame fan.
I think that Notre Dame, yes, could beat USC because USC has lost plenty, but a game at home at the Coliseum. Notre Dame going in there, it's the final game of the season. It'll probably mean a lot for both teams. That will be a big game. It'll be interesting to see who it comes down to at the end, who wins. The Florida State game is an interesting game. Florida State is going to be better at that point in the season. Are they hitting a stride? Are they struggling? Are they thriving? If they're a team that's thriving like I think they could be, it will be an interesting game, but I would give the edge to Notre Dame being at home.
Well, and the one thing, I don't mean to cut you off, I do want to mention this for the USC side. I'm going to do what I love to do, Brandon. And
Don't tell me it's a trivia question.
It is a trivia question.
I hate you.
I'm basically going to ask you this question of, do you know the last time that USC lost at home?
No, I don't.
It was October 8th, a Thursday night in 2015. They lost 17-12 to the Washington Huskies. The next week, they went to South Bend and lost 41-31 to the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. But that's the sense of, with the comment that you said you got, why Trojan fans can be confident and why I bring that game up of, that's going to be a much different game than it was last year, because it's not like, oh, they haven't lost in 2 years, they can't lose at home, but it's this team plays and has shown for the last 2 years, 6-0, 7-0, that they don't lose in the Coliseum.
And that's fine, but mention again who that team was that they lost to when they went on the road and they played.
That was the 2015 Washington team.
No. That's not what I asked. I asked, who was the next team that when they went on the road and they played and they lost 41-31? Who was that?
Notre Dame.
Thanks.
But it was on the road.
I don't give a crap.
No, but I'm saying...
I understand. I get exactly what you're saying, and I understand why USC fans can be confident. But it depends on the team who comes in there. History, anyone can go ahead and say, well, the last couple of years, whatever. Yeah, that's nice. That's cool. History doesn't matter when it comes to the game that you're playing that day. History is wonderful. It's great for people like us to be able to talk about it. It gives us fodder. It gives us information. But the day of the game is what matters. What happens that day. And I am not saying that Notre Dame is going to go in there, cakewalk to a win. I'm not even saying Notre Dame is going to go in there and win. I am saying that it's going to be a very good football game in that final week of the season. And like I mentioned before, it's going to mean something. USC and Notre Dame are both going to need the win. That's what I'm saying.
The thing that I find funny is that you mention history, and I just for shits and giggles wanted to pull up the Notre Dame USC rivalry. Since 2013, it has been alternated. So 2013, Notre Dame won. 2014, USC won. 2015, Notre Dame. 2016, USC. Last year, Notre Dame. If you want to be one of the history pundits, if history proceeds or kind of repeats itself, USC should win this game. But I find it funny that the thing is, the last time one of these two teams won on the road was when Notre Dame was ranked number 1 and they went to the national title. Like, that's the last time Notre Dame won in SC. And the last time that SC won in Notre Dame was the year before in 2011. Ever since then, when Notre Dame has won, it's been in South Bend. And when SC has won, it's been in LA. Like, that's what it's been like since 2013.
And I completely get that. But one of these years, it's not going to go like that.
Any given Saturday.
Why not?
There's that part to
2018. And I'm not saying that only because I appreciate Notre
Schilling,
Dame.
why not us?
I'm just saying that because you can't go like that forever.
Yeah.
You can't go like that forever. Something will change.
It's not written in stone until after that final buzzer blows.
Exactly. And I looking at the schedule, I've pegged Notre Dame for 10 to 11 wins. I see them for
that's counting the bowl game.
No,
Okay.
that's
So
not. I'm not counting a bowl game.
So
I'm
that's
counting
one or
just
two
their,
losses.
I'm counting just the regular season right
so
here.
So it's 1 or 2 losses in the regular season.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's exactly it.
Right.
And I think that this team is good enough offensively, defensively. Offensively, they still have exciting weapons to be able to use. Defensively, they have enough returners and they have enough guys that are going to be in spots that are good. On the defensive side, though, in the secondary, they need to get interceptions. They didn't have many interceptions last season. I mean, we're looking slim to none. And they need to be better there. This is a team that needs to be better. And we're talking about a 10-3 team last year. They need to be better. They need to be better. But for Notre Dame, there's a very high standard. There's a very high standard. Everyone knows it. Everyone knows it, and especially Notre Dame faithful. And it needs to be met. And I was one of those guys calling for Brian Kelly's head a couple of years ago, and I think rightfully so. Brian Kelly was being a dick. He was acting like an asshole. I think it was everything he did was uncalled for. It absolutely was. Calling players out, getting all hot and bothered under the collar. A good coach, yes, can get upset. I get it. Nick Saban, I think he's a great coach. He gets a little testy, but a good coach also defends his players, doesn't throw them under the bus, and he'll take the heat himself without throwing it on players. That is not what Brian Kelly did. He had a good bounce back season, but he also got a new defensive coordinator. He now has a new one this year. We will see exactly what Clark Lee does. I expect good things because he learned from a good guy. Notre Dame should be set up for success again this year.
The comparison I'm going to make, and I don't know if this is true, but it just popped into my head because I was thinking Nick Saban when you brought him up. Like, you're talking about Brian Kelly, and I'm like, well, a guy like Nick Saban doesn't do that. It's like, for example, I was listening to The Herd, and he was talking about the new helmet rule in the NFL.
Do you like The Herd?
I love The Herd. I disagree with him many days, but still love listening to him. And he made a good point of, like, teams like Bill Belichick, why are the Patriots not complaining about the helmet rule? Because they are ahead of the curve. That is how they teach players to tackle. It ain't going to affect them because of how they teach. Nick Saban in college football, kind of the same way, where it's like, you know what? He is the guy that he can let his emotions overtake him, but he doesn't let it happen a lot. Where Brian Kelly, to me, is a guy who is the exact opposite. And the comparison that I'm going to make is Nick Saban is like your Bill Belichick. Brian Kelly is like your Mike Tomlin. Just think of the NFL. Which coach would you rather have? I'm going to have Bill Belichick every time. And I know people are going to say, Ricky, wow, saying that you'd rather have Nick Saban or Bill Belichick over Mike Tomlin and Brian Kelly. But how many people look at the Steelers and go, they will never win a Super Bowl again if they have Mike Tomlin as their head coach? I kind of think the same thing could be said for Notre Dame with Brian Kelly. But because you gave your wins and losses, I'll give mine, I think, a 9-3 team. 9-3. The losses are Michigan to open the year, VT on the road, and SC to end the year in the Coliseum. The only way I see them going 8-4 is if they lose to Stanford in South Bend.
I don't see them losing every single game that they have against a ranked opponent. I don't see that. That would be very hard to see in my mind, and that would be then an 8-5 team. I don't see that happening. I don't see that happening at all. I don't
see 5 happening at all either. I see 9-3 or 9-3, 8-4 before the bowl game.
If anything, I see them beating Florida State, Virginia Tech, Michigan. The games I could see them possibly losing, Stanford and or USC. Those are the ones that I see.
I mean, Michigan's going to be tough. That's going to be one where, for both teams, like, neither team is a powerhouse I know, powerhouse name, but right now, you got Michigan. No matter what Michigan fans tell us, we got a ton of comments where, like, if you think Jim Harbaugh's on the hot seat, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, if you can't beat Ohio State and you're not going to make the college football playoff, what are you doing?
Hey, if you are that big of a fan where your judgment is clouded because you have that much fandom, then what are you talking about?
Which, by the way, we did get a good comment on that video. I cannot remember. I don't have it in front of me. But we got a comment from a student at Michigan that clarified my point that I was saying, that my geometry teacher in high school told us, where he said that teachers have warned students about wearing the maize and blue at Ohio State, and parents, and he said parents have gotten their cars vandalized just for having Michigan flags on their cars. So just
there's some good people out there.
Solidified my point with how that rivalry can go. But I mean, yeah, for me, it's the games to watch for sure. And these are the games that could be losses. There's 4 of them. Michigan to start the year. Stanford because of Bryce Love. Bryce Love is going to carry that team. If Notre Dame wins, it's because Stanford's defense couldn't do enough.
Yeah. Stanford's defense isn't going to be good.
Exactly. That's why I'm saying, I'm not saying Stanford's going to win that game, but if they do, it's because Bryce Love goes off on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Virginia Tech is another game of interest, and then SC. So those are the 4 games I watch for potential losses, and I think 3 of them will be losses at the end of the year.
All right, well, there you have it. That's what we think this week.
This has been a longer edition of That's What I Think.
It's been the longest edition, and it will be the longest edition because we will not probably be doing anything like this again for That's What I Think. But we wanted to do it because we both believe that Notre Dame deserved a preview, especially because they were in the top 25. Unfortunately, and something that we've talked about before, they are not in a conference, and maybe they should just, float on over to it.
I would love for them to be in the Big Ten, man. I would love for them to play Michigan every year, play Purdue every year, play Indiana, play the Indiana schools every year, play Michigan every year, put them in the Big Ten East. That's basically what I'm saying. But then they have to play Purdue every year because Purdue's on the other side.
Well, again, there you have it. That's what we think this week, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening. And make sure you comment down below. Let us know what you think about Notre Dame this season. Do you think they're going to have a good season? Was last year a fluke? Was 2016 a fluke? What do you believe? Let us know down below. And if I know our Notre Dame fans out there, you will. So, again, that will wrap it up this week for us. We're back next week. Well, I will be on camera.
Yeah,
Ricky
I won't
will
be.
be
I'll be
behind the camera. But I did not lie in saying we'll both be back. Same time, same place, 2 Central, 3 Eastern, and 12 Pacific. Again, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody. So long.